Dr. Jazz.
So much, Jonas, for taking the time.
Jazz.
I've listened to you since I discovered Shawn Lane, and then, you know, started digging into various things that you did. And I saw you in Maribor actually 10 years ago with Ginger.
Oh, really? Yeah.
That was 2011, I think, in October actually. Yeah.
Yeah, with a bass and Reggie Wooten.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask you, how did, just to start this, how did your story with Ginger actually happen? Because, you know, he's one of the greats of drums, and, you know, his rhythm section with Jack Bruce, come on, it's like one of the best there was. So.
What? Is that a mine or yours?
I think it's you.
Wait. Computers, they do things on their own. Right. Okay, is it still there?
Yeah, all good.
Okay. Well, you know, first of all, we had many sort of friends in common when I started with John McLaughlin in the early 80s. I mean, of course, John had played with him too. And then I was in New York, and Bill Laswell, if you know who that is.
Sure.
He asked me to play on this record that he was doing for Johnny Lydon, for Johnny Watson, called Public Image. Bill. And it was Ginger playing drums. And I liked very much what I heard on there. So I asked Bill for his phone number. So I got his phone number, and when I got to Italy with John, Ginger was sitting in Italy at that time. I called him up, and we talked and became friends, and we started playing. That's basically how it started.
Yeah, but I saw there's a footage on YouTube, like, I don't know, from California, just the duo of you.
Yeah.
Improvising. Did you guys do that a lot? Just improvise freely?
Yeah. Oh yeah, a lot. Actually, we did a lot of tours, just the two of us, and we did a lot of tours in different combinations, different keyboard players. We had Bernie Worrell for a long time, sure. And another one called Andrew Lewis, who used to play with Johnny Guitar Watson. And we did a tour with Jens Johansson on keyboard.
Yeah.
We did another tour where there were two bass players and Ginger and another percussionist. And no, we have done a lot of concerts over the years. I think 85 or 86 was the first thing we did in Denmark.
Yeah.
In Denmark. Yeah, it's been going on a long time.
Yeah, it was beautiful to hear you improvise like with him, because, you know, he's such this like watery type of a drummer, just the flow and kind of Elvinish almost in a way.
Yeah, you see, that was for me the whole thing, that the first time we played together was at this festival in Copenhagen, and we had never even seen each other before, and we just went on stage without rehearsal and we played with this keyboard player. No, wait, was that a duet? That might just have been a duet. Yeah, it was just the two of us.
Wow.
And we did it a lot. But the thing was with Ginger was that he was playing musical phrases. He wasn't just holding down the beat or playing a rhythm. He was actually playing with you, answering, and very, very inventive and big ears. Listened a lot.
Yeah, that's what I.
Yeah, no, there's a lot more. We did tours of that, like also when I played acoustic bass guitar.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Like to hear you guys, that footage. It's so beautiful to hear you improvise. It's just amazing because it just goes, and you're like, you know, you're like way younger than he was, of course, and he's just like really playing, and you're like really digging into the playing. It's so beautiful. Like, yeah, very nice. But I wanted to ask you about something. You know, these last few months or years, with many musicians we're talking about the music industry, and I think you were one of the first guys that made his own label in the late 70s or early 80s, and you know, it's like I know Tim Byrne, the saxophone player who I played with, he had his own label, but there were not many musicians, and I listened to the Bassic Thing, which was a rare thing to do. I think, you know, I think only Michael Manring did it solo bass, like, you know, not as what you did. And how did you, first of all, like, two questions, how did you decide to do that, like as a first debut as a musician, and how come your own label already back then? How did that story start?
Well, the inspiration for us to play bass that way was very much due to a bass player called Colin Hodgkinson, if you know who that is. He had a group called Backdoor, which inspired me a lot. So in the early 70s, mid 70s, I got really into him, and I started sort of playing in a similar style, with playing chords and playing melodies and do things like that. And I guess what happened was that it actually worked for me, and it led to a gig at Montreux Jazz Festival, playing solo, which is how I met McLaughlin and Billy Cobham and Michael Breck.
Ah, okay.
And actually, you know, it's just it was something that had never been done when I did it. Like nobody played, except for Colin Hodgkinson. Nobody played bass in that way. And it's just, I don't know, it just fascinated me and intrigued me, and that's what I ended up doing. Yeah. And I guess another thing that actually helped it was that in those years, like the late 70s, I was studying a lot. I was studying music theory, counterpoint, like classical music, and I had no piano or no guitar at home to try out chord progressions.
Okay. Well,
so I did it on the bass, and that is what gave me a vocabulary of chords and ways of playing it. And then I heard, also, of course, I got in a little bit to these kind of jazz guitar players who do that sort of like chord and melody and stuff, and that's sort of what led to that.
Yeah.
When it comes to the label thing, was that it was really hard to get a record deal in those days. It was next to impossible if you didn't have like this, you know, a good pop sensibility or something else. And there was a Swedish jazz label called Amigo, and they were also distributors for a lot of foreign brands, like ECM and Enja.
Okay.
And I approached them, and they said, "Yeah, we like your stuff, but just, you know, it's a big investment to actually produce a record, to press it and everything. So we don't know if we can take the risk in not selling enough copies to recoup. But I tell you what, if you finance the recording yourself, you can release it on our label. So that is what I did with the first record. Is that it was basically my label. They had their label on the record in order to get into the systems and everything, and that went really well. So I continued like that. I saw no reason to get the record contract at that point because I was getting all the money.
Yeah, sure. That's you were way ahead. Yeah, like.
Yeah, and everybody else was getting small royalties and selling many more records, but I only needed to sell like a few thousand records, and I made much more than they did. So, and also with it is also that came. I got a lot of course, when I first started playing with John McLaughlin, I got a lot of interest,
sure.
And I easily hooked up the distribution deals all over the world, very quickly. So it really made sense financially to do that. So.
Yeah, amazing. I wanted to ask you about you're still about your solo playing. It's like, how did you know, like we're talking mid-70s, like Jaco came also in the States, and but how were you? Your style was completely different than his or is. I mean, but how did you start to developing your style? I mean, like. Just by trying things, or you know, I listened to the first album and like with Shawn Lane or your own records with Tony Williams. That one I want to ask you later about that. But you know, like trying flageolets and the runs and the chords. Like, how did all these techniques develop through time? Like, were you aware you were doing something new in a way, or?
Yeah, well, it had a lot to do with. I was very seriously studying music at the time, as I said, you know, and I was playing classical stuff, and I was studying different classical compositions, and you know, having to play it on the bass just in order to check it out to see, okay, so what is this thing here? So I read it and I play it, and okay. Then you get, oh, that sounds good. That's a cool thing to play on bass, and slowly that developed. That sort of idea developed. And also, I was I had friends who were classical players and students and teachers at the conservatories, and I was studying them to see, okay, so how do you approach your instrument? How do you play the cello? How do you hold the hands? How do you do this and how do you do that? And I was just building up knowledge about how people play music, and that sort of gave the music, or gave the techniques to play the music.
It's similar, but Victor Wooten said also, right, with his brothers, right? That he, you know, they were playing while, and he tried to adapt these techniques to the bass also. So it's kind of similar approach almost. But we're talking about the late 70s in Sweden, and how was? I mean, it's hard to characterize what you did in the beginning. It's jazz, but it's also so many influences, improvised, you know. Like, but how was the scene where you were working musically? Like, who were you influenced by musically back then, in late 70s, let's say?
Well, as I said,
jazz-wise maybe, or
but and also, of course, John McLaughlin, when Mahavishnu came out, that was a big thing.
Okay,
you know, I was really into that, the first Mahavishnu records. But there was no scene to talk of. I mean, I didn't really play a lot of gigs or stuff. And then I went for a while. I got on the national scene with some rock bands and similar. But that was it was like I quit that very quickly, and took a job instead. And then finally I got this breakthrough with the Montreux Jazz Festival, where I got to play a solo gig down there, and I made.
Which year was that?
Can't remember. 80, 81, 82.
81 already.
Somewhere around then.
And after this McLaughlin contact, how did this contact with McLaughlin then happen? I mean,
I met him there that year. The thing was, I played, and there was some talk about me, and Michael Brecker approached me, and he said, "Oh, I heard about you. I would like to hear you play." And oh, sure, okay. So he assembled a little crowd in a little club on the festival area there. So there I was with on stage playing solo for Brecker, Mike Manieri, Don Grosnick.
Oh, wow.
Maybe Steve Gadd was there. It was just like, anyway, that caliber musicians, maybe 6 or 7 of them, and me on stage playing and
solo bass. Wow, man.
solo bass. And I realized that, okay, this is my opportunity. Now I have to play.
Yeah.
I have to do it now. This is the one moment I have worked for. So I did. I delivered, and Michael liked me a lot, and he started introducing me. So one of the shows at that festival was Chick Corea and John McLaughlin in duet.
Oh, wow, man.
So after that show, Brecker introduced me to John, and then I made some other contacts, and I was doing a record in 1982 in Stockholm with Michael Fried, the drummer from Sama, Michael. And he bumped into McLaughlin on the street in Stockholm. And he said, "Oh, what are you doing here?" And he said that he was making a record with me. And John said, "Oh, wow, really? Okay. Why don't you come to the concert tonight?" He was playing with the trio with Ars Moriende and
Oh, yeah.
So we went, and then after that show, John told me that we will do something together. And I did not quite believe it still. Yes.
Sure.
But a few months later, he called me, and then
you went to the States then, or?
No, he lived in Paris at the time.
He lived in Paris that time. Oh, okay.
Yeah. So the first thing we did was a trio with Billy Cobham and John and myself, and that is also on the internet. That is on YouTube.
Oh, okay. To check it out.
So that's the issue. And then after that, we started that group Mahavishnu, and then after Mahavishnu, we did the duets.
I love that duets. Yeah, I have like 4. A friend of mine, I think 3 or 4 bootlegs. He got me your duets, and it's such a shame that it's not out officially as an album, because it's amazing, man. It's like really.
Okay. No, I'm very happy about those. I like it a lot.
The duets, yeah, are like, Electric Dreams and Follow Your Heart, and I don't know what else. Thelonious you play, and it's just like. It's so beautiful.
It's very nice. It's very how would you say, unpretentious. It's just like here are the pieces, here are the songs we play, and that's it. No, it's nice. It is.
Yeah, because this Mahavishnu kind of reunion. I don't know. It doesn't sound so good as your duets. I'll put it like that.
Thank you. I tend to agree, but yes.
It's amazing musicians, Billy Cobham, Bill Evans, and all. But musically, it's like when I listen to you alone, it's more intimate and way more music communication than the 84 Mahavishnu one is like, okay, it's.
Yeah. No, I do agree with it. It was a much more honest and more true.
Honest.
Just play, no pretense and no hype and no fancy clothes or anything like that.
That's
music.
So beautiful. I mean, and I've read somewhere then in the 80s you went then to New York, or am I mistaken then about that?
I moved to New York in '86. Yeah.
How was this like for you? This transition then to New York and.
Well, all the people I was working with were in America, and my main record market was in America. Like all the people I was interested in working with and dealing with, they were in New York. So it made no sense to be in Sweden.
Yeah.
I was really isolated in Sweden. So sure, I had my friends, and I actually owned a cafe back then. and socially it was all very nice and cozy, but in terms of doing music and stuff, no, that was not. And then when I got to New York, I brought my recording studio with me, like a big 24-track, big mixing console and everything. And I put it up in a studio together with Laswell, with the Laswell at the time.
Ah, okay.
So we had,
that's why you worked so much with him. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. Okay, I wanted to ask you that. And did this work through Bill then produce the Word? This album that you did with Tony Williams, like how did that one happen? Because for me, man, that's like really one of the most underrated albums.
Yeah.
Because your arrangements with the string quartet are beautiful, but what Tony's playing, man, it's like, you know, he's in such a good form, like the rights and everything, like, you know, and some tunes.
Yeah, no, it was, well, it was the time when Laswell had just started his Axiom label.
Yeah.
And I had told him many times that I was dying to do something with Tony Williams, that I really wanted to do something with him. And he said, okay, why don't we do a record on Axiom with Tony? And he asked me, what would you like to do? And I said, well, I really would like to do a record with bass, drums, and a string orchestra. But it was not possible budget-wise to have a whole orchestra. But so we settled for a string quartet. So actually, all those pieces were written with an orchestra in mind.
Oh, okay.
They were actually, I had to condense them to fit the string quartet format. But yeah, that was it.
And how was this contact with Tony and musically? Like, how did that work? Like,
oh, he was brilliant. I had made the little sequence demos of all the compositions.
Oh, okay.
So we would, before we made did a take, we would listen to them, you know, in the control room, like, and he would make some notes, and then we would play them, just the two of us.
Ah, okay. Wow.
And he would get it. He would catch it immediately. He would memorize it just from one or two listenings, and
wow.
And then we would play, and it was very free, and it was very, yeah. No, he was. I mean, talking about great drummers, he was.
Oh, man, you worked with some of the greats. Like when I checked the drummers you played with, it's just like really, like, you know, incredible musicians. You know, Billy Cobham, Trilog, Ginger Baker, Tony Williams, Jeff Sipe. You know, like
Michael Fried.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, man, I love that album. I love that one with Shawn. Yeah, it's beautiful. Like.
Oh, did you hear the one with me and Michael and Buckethead on?
Yeah. The Octaves project. Yeah. I mean, you know, I'm a guitar teacher otherwise, so I teach, you know, Buckethead's many of his songs also, and this Octave of the Holy Innocents, I didn't know about it, and you know, I discovered it, and I was like, really? Him playing acoustic guitar, first of all, that was a huge shock. And how he played it, it's also... And was this an idea of yours, to him play acoustic? Oh, really?
Yeah, because he was so overexposed at the time with his electric stuff, and it was so... Guitar at that time was so much like, you know, pornographic sensationalism.
True.
And so I wanted to do something with him where he just do something very different, and no pyrotechnics, just like try to play, you know. So that's yeah.
But did you know him from before, or like did you just contact him for that project, or?
No, that was totally a bilateral connection. He was doing a bunch of projects with Bill, and Bill more or less asked me if I had an idea of something to do with Buckethead. He was going to be in town for an extended period of time. So, and then again, I mean, we got along very well, and he is a very shy person. He's very scared of people, and he always walks around with a mask or a bucket on his head, and he doesn't. But with me, he was very. He wasn't. We actually just hung out like two normal people, and we talked a lot and had lots of conversations.
Yeah, no, it's I think it's the only record. I mean, he did some solo acoustic stuff on his records, but like didn't do many sideman records anyway, right? I think it's like
mostly stuff with Laszlo.
Yeah, which is beautiful to hear him on this one. But speaking of guitarists, I have to ask you this: like, for me, one of my favorite guitarists is Shawn Lane. I mean, probably the most underrated guitarist in history of electric guitar, I would say. I mean, if you ask me, like, really considering what he played. But I wanted to ask you, like, how did you guys meet, and how did you discover him, or how did you find each other, and how did this amazing trio with Jeff Sipe then actually happen? Because it's incredible.
Yeah, I first heard about him through Anders and Jens Johansson, because they had met him when they were touring with Yngwie. They were in Memphis, and they went to do the laundry, and next to the laundry place was the music store, and they went in, and they were fiddling around with some instruments, and there was this weird guy there with a weird looking guitar, and he was like fiddling around, and Jens started playing some kind of UK piece or some Frank Zappa piece. And this weird little guy, he played note for note with Jens, like the whole arrangement, and they were, who is this guy? And then so they got friends, and they jammed a little bit, and they brought him to the concert, and they stayed in touch. And then Shawn made a tape of all his music, of all the stuff he was doing, and sent it to them. And they played that for me, and that was, oh wow, something else. And then that was it. Then nothing much happened until I was in Paris at a music trade show, and he was there performing for Vichy, I think it was. So I went there and I introduced myself, and he had seen me play many times, and he was very, very happy to meet, and we just decided to play. And I invited him to Sweden to do the record called Abstract Logic.
Yeah, sure.
Which was with Kofi Baker on drums. And then we went from there. And then and I came over to Memphis, and we were hanging out for a couple of months in Memphis in his house. And first we played some with Kofi. Mm-hmm. No, actually, before I went to Memphis, we went to Seattle. We went to Michael Freed's.
Oh yeah, the Two Doors project, yeah.
And we wrote those tunes for that record. And then when we went to Germany and recorded that for CMP Records, then after that I went to Memphis, and we were just hanging out, and then we tried to play with Kofi some more. And then he would keep telling me about this drummer, Jeff Sipe, or Apartment Q258, who played with the Aquarium Rescue Unit.
Yeah.
And I said, yeah, sure, let's try it, let's do that. And Jeff came down, and he was there for a day or two, and he said, oh, so when are we going to rehearse? And me and Shawn said, nah, let's not rehearse. Then we went and played the gig, and he just had to jump in and play it. And
oh man,
we had some songs, but it really worked very well together. So that's what we continued with.
Yeah. It's a.
How did you? I had it. Yeah, go ahead.
No, how did you guys time is the enemy? Like, I memorized. I know some solos that he played. Like when he's singing, like I think Heretics or Barua Zoldani. Like, but did you guys write those tunes together, or like how was that process of making the music with him or with that group? Like,
it was. Well, I had this idea that I wanted to be free to just play, and I actually showed Shawn was not very much into Indian music before we met, and when we were doing Abstract Logic, I had all these VHS cassettes with Indian and Pakistani music, and I was playing it to him, like Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan.
Oh yeah, sure.
And a lot of the like older Indian stuff, and I was showing him how it's when you have one of those guys improvising, or normally their students or the disciples sitting behind and filling up and imitating and responding to what the master is playing, and I wanted to do something like that where we actually would just improvise all the time, and even though we would have some themes, some ideas, some structures, we would not be limited to them. We wouldn't have to play those songs. We wouldn't have to play the songs like that. We could take a theme out of one and just play it. But then as we did play, they crystallized into certain forms and certain shapes that they became sort of pieces that we repeated. But originally it was very much like we went on stage and played. But of course, having gotten a little bit of a repertoire made it possible that when we didn't have the inspiration, we could actually pick songs and just play through a set. But a lot of the time we went and we just improvised whole sets without any song, just like anything. Just that is it.
Wow.
And it sounds like wow, fantastic, but it is just courage, because if you have some sense of music, and you hear something and you dare to imitate or go with it or fulfill it or do something with it, then just about anybody can do that.
Yeah.
Varying degrees, of course, and the more you do it, the better you get at it. And that was the whole idea with the group, and what was my idea and what I pushed for it. Because before that, Shawn, when he played gigs, he had a very strict set list and very strict arrangements, and it was
wow, I didn't know that. Wow.
very compulsive. He was very nervous initially about doing that.
Oh wow.
And he said, "Oh, this was this. People don't like it." And I told him, "Listen, this is my group. You're not going to be get in trouble because people don't like it. I am. This is what we should do. This is just open up and just do whatever you want. I don't care. If people throw tomatoes, that's fine. Just try, just go for it. And if it's a catastrophe, it's a catastrophe. What are you going to do?" And
yeah, that's amazing. Yeah. No, but there are so many bootlegs of you guys being recorded, and everything. When I hear of that group is just like at such a high level. I think Jeff Sipe also put it on his Bandcamp. I think it's like the second or the third gig of the third that you guys did, and it's just like already then incredible how tight relationship you developed. Actually, it's amazing.
Yeah, it was. I mean, obviously we had particularly me and Shawn, we had a lot of what would you say? We had a lot of music in common, things that we liked, things that we knew, things that we had listened to, and things that we had studied. So we understood a lot of the same vocabulary. And that is, of course, a great foundation for it.
Yeah.
And of course, Jeff is a very, also of course, a very skilled and knowledgeable drummer, but also primarily he has very big ears. He listens a lot, and he's there with you. And I think in order to deflate that myth a little bit, it is what everybody should do for their own health and benefit. Because if you do that sort of thing, that you just dare to improvise like that and listen, that you get into the essence of what music is.
Yeah.
Music is not, I have learned this circus trick and I can stand on my head while juggling balls with my feet. That is not music. If you can actually speak, if you hear somebody say something musically and you can respond in music, then you are playing music.
Yeah.
And it was a time in Western culture, when you had these great composers like Bach, Beethoven, Mozart, Haydn, Handel, and they could play on an incredible level, but they could also improvise. Yeah, and they had total command and freedom, and that is what you're going for. And it's not about the perceived greatness of the music itself. It is about that process for you as an individual, for you as a human, to allow yourself to do it with that sort of freedom. It might sound like crap, but if you have the courage and the willingness to just explore it and to get better at it, you find something in music that you would not find if you just practice and learn to play something mechanically.
Yeah.
And that is what is improvisation. You know, it's a term that is very. I mean, it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. But for me, it actually means being able to think and play music in real time.
Free your mind in a way, almost.
Yeah. And you hear something and you respond and you're aware what is being played, and you play with it and on it, and to it and through it, and that's it. That really is it, and that happened with that group, and that is why it actually is very nice music. What we did really.
But
yeah, go ahead.
No, just wanted to catch you here about improvising. Like, how did you? You know, you said like Shawn was in the beginning. What will the people say? Will they like it? But how do you approach, let's say, jumping into a free impro or just going to a concert without any preconception what to play? How do you deal then with exactly with this, with fear of and with expectations? How did you learn not to have fear or not to have expectations? How do you deal with these situations, or did?
Solo bass gigs. In the beginning, because I started doing solo bass gigs, and since it was only me, I had the freedom to venture out and go wherever I want. And also at the time, Keith Jarrett was a big influence.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
And I was primarily seeing what he was doing, and I said, wow, he just goes up and he plays. Yeah. He improvised. Wow. I wish I could do that with a bass. I would try it. And I did. And particularly when it comes to the solo performance, you connect with the audience in a whole different manner, because they are the people you play with at that point. What you play has to be directly directed and related to them, and you have to get the response. You have to get a sense of participation for it to work. But when it does, it becomes really incredible. And that is what I wanted to expand to these other musicians, with Shawn and Jeff.
Yeah.
And what I was going to say, and then of course when we started playing with Selvaganesh and the Indian guys, that was second nature to them, because that is what they do.
Exactly.
You know, and another thing I learned, particularly from Selva, but that comes from that tradition, is that when somebody plays, when somebody else is the soloist, sort of, you work to make them sound good.
Yeah.
You back them up and you lift them and you carry them. If they make a mistake, if they screw up something, you change and you adapt so that it sounds like that was intended, that it should be. You don't. It's not a competition like, oh, can you keep up with us? We're playing in 1716. Can you? No, it's not that. It is like, okay, this guy has no idea what he's doing, but I can work around him so he sounds wonderful. And that is the continuation of that, actually. And the thing that you can just take anything and you can go anywhere. but you have to be there. You have to listen, and you have to be aware, and you have to.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, you mentioned Indian music, and what made you decide to go in to research? You know, I'm worried. I love it, but for me, it's such a, you know, I love all music, like from rock, heavy metal, jazz, improvised, classical. But to dive into Indian, I just did a little bit, and it's so vast of a universe. And you seem to like really dive into it for some time. I know you played already with Trilok in the 80s on Asfred, but like what was the trigger to try to research that area of music? And
well, it started way when I was a kid, when I was a little hippie, you know, listening to Ravi Shankar and that sound, that aesthetic entered my mind, and that was, you know, it was part of growing up in the late 60s, early 70s. That was the thing to do, was to be into Indian music, Indian mythology, Indian philosophy, all that. So that is the foundation of it. But what I did find was, to put it in very simple terms, is that the Western music tradition has a very developed methodology of melody, no, sorry, it's not melody, of form and harmony.
Yeah.
You know, everything is tonality, form, and harmony. That's the only thing they talk about.
Yeah.
They have no way of teaching melody or phrasing or rhythm. The West European or Western instruction in rhythmical complexity is nothing.
Yeah, true. Yeah,
you know?
True.
And what fascinates me about India is one is the whole conical system where every beat or every note has a specific syllable, and you make it up like all this stuff. It's a way of structuring your ideas so you actually understand what you know. So if you want to understand how this rhythm goes on top of that rhythm and how this form keeps up with that form, if you have two different time signatures at the same time, it's a method of understanding and keeping perspective on it. And once you have that, you don't have to use it for Indian music. It's just a way of understanding rhythm.
Yeah, concept. Yeah.
And the aesthetic of it can be totally different. Of course, what they do in Indian, particularly South Indian Carnatic music with rhythms, is astounding and fantastic and all that. But you don't even have to do that. It's a way of teaching that is supreme. And the other thing is that they have a very developed method of ornamentation and melodic performance.
Yeah.
And understanding scale and understanding tonality that is way beyond what any Western system has. And it explains a lot of things that we look upon as very strange scales as totally normal. And they explain them very clearly. This is how this is. This is how this rag is used and how you play it and how you... And similarly, you don't have to make Indian music with it. You can make totally different music. And the key thing for me is I never pretended to understand Indian music. I just took some components out of it, and I learned enough so that I can play with Indian musicians.
Yeah.
But the depth of that stylistic form is beyond me. I mean, I don't have time for it. I don't have time to go back and learn to correctly play Indian music.
Yeah.
And I have no desire to or no intention to. But the thing, the pieces of the puzzle that were missing actually got filled there, and I understand Bach much better now with the knowledge of this Indian teaching.
Sure.
And even Beethoven, I've noticed in his piano sonata, fantastic rhythmical permutations that would just go by, and you would not notice it if you didn't have this Indian rhythmical knowledge.
Interesting. Yeah.
Which is quite incredible.
Yeah. Very interesting. Yeah. Like, did this, like, I just wanted to ask you also this, we were talking about improvisation and kind of through Indian, like, how do you approach then on the other side of the game, composition? When you compose, does it come from you improvising, or like, is it like, how is your approach when composing?
Wow, that is a very hard one to answer because it happens when you're not aware.
Mm. In what sense? I mean, okay, let's say you know you're making a new project, so, and you need to write 5 ideas or sketches. How do you approach usually that? How do you get the ideas?
Well, say that if somebody would ask me, I would like you to write this for that, I could not do it. I mean, I could, but I would not do it. Because it would be so mechanical and constructive.
Wow,
I have done, you know, efforts to actually compose music to write. Okay, now I'm going to write this. I'm going to make some new pieces for this next record, and I try to write, and it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Then, for instance, I sit with a cup of coffee. For instance, when I was living in New York, I had a favorite cafe. I would sit every morning, and without fail, after the third espresso, my mind started racing, and I would just get with all these ideas, and I would frantically write on paper napkins, and I would come home and I would look at, oh, okay, yeah, that's good, that's not good, okay, that's, and it's sort of like that you get exposed to something, and when you're not trying, all of a sudden it's there. And then another part of it is that, for instance, that you make music for a record, and then you have to get together with people to play it. If you insist, oh no, I wrote it like this, it has to be like that, and this and this and that, then it becomes very stiff and boring. But okay, here are my ideas. Okay, what can we do? And then it changes with life. It just appears, and then okay, oh no, play like that, do that. Yeah, this is good. Oh, and it just happens basically.
Yeah.
And the way I've looked at music pretty much my entire life is that it is not the creative process, it's the journey of discovery.
Yeah.
You don't make anything, everything is already written, you just find it. You know, everything can be traced to something, but oh, I hear this in my head. Yes, of course, you went to the movies last night and you heard that piece that somebody else wrote, and now you're stealing it. Well, that's how it works.
Yeah.
And
true.
But if you're too much caught up in your own ego and you think that you're doing stuff, then that will limit you. But if you just allow yourself to discover, and you know, harmony, melodies, it's nothing that nobody invented. We just found it. You know, you play a chord. Okay, what can you sing or play on it? Well, that's what you hear, and it's very much shaped by what culture you're in.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the pre-concept. Yeah. Yeah, very interesting. Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you, Jonas, for sharing some of these thoughts. That's appreciated. Really. And
Dr. Jazz.